It is now time for the Port Podcast.
In 3, 2, 1, welcome back, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to watch or listen another episode of the Port Podcast. We are so excited to have Sara Norman here from Shades of Green. We're so excited to talk to you about your methodology of design, the amazing projects that you've been doing, and I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you so much for giving us some time today.
And thank you for the honor of being here.
And I have to say, there's probably listeners, viewers that are thinking, who is Sara? And who is Shades of Green, and what is the relevance on a port podcast? I think there's probably some people going,
we're going to dig in.
You know, Shades of Green. Oh, I've heard of them. They've done work for me personally.
Dig
what an
in.
incredible company.
And we just want to make sure there was a Shades of Green that was a cannabis company. It's not us.
Okay.
This is pure landscaping, folks. This is
landscaping.
beautification.
It
So I want to give a little context, a
Yeah.
little bit why Shades of Green has become a very, very important company for the Port Authority and some of the work that we've been working on. I know, Sara, you're going to answer lots of questions and share, but I just want to give a little port perspective on the relationship that started, I believe, last year.
It did.
And has really evolved. So one of the early podcasts that we filmed last year, we talked about land transitions and the belief that our senior management team has at the port that we need to be better custodians of the land that interfaces with the community. So, you know, we have these assets that are very, very important for marine cargo and Canada's trade. We know that. We talked a lot about our growth journey in the last couple of years here, all really important, but we live here too. Mm-hmm. And we have to make sure that the port can be as visually appealing as it possibly can be. And I've had the great fortune of traveling to so many ports around the world, and at their best, the Rotterdams, the Antwerps, the Hamburg, the London Gateway, Vancouver in Canada, they do such a good job of being green in places that they can afford to be green and have that better transition to the terminal. So we undertook a project, and we worked with Acre Architecture. And Monica Adair, who's been on this podcast, showed us some of the spaces that we really should be focused on. And kind of we've got about 7 areas that we've identified as being a big priority, and one being Long-Wharf because it is such close proximity to Harbor Passage, probably one of the best transportation assets that we have by foot and by bike in the city of St. John. So when Shades of Green came last year, it was really just to look at our office spaces and the cruise terminals, and this relationship has really bloomed. I know I had to do that. Oh, look at this. I'm such a ham. Has really gone to the next level, and now you've become part of that land transition piece. So long-winded way of maybe asking you the first question. How did you find us? And maybe tell us a little bit about your journey with the port from last year into this year, and part of that land transition project that you've recently been working on with us.
Thank you. So the journey actually began with just looking at your spaces that we were initially asked to have some involvement with, which was containers and things that most people look at and they don't think of as an opportunity. And we definitely saw that as an opportunity to, instead of doing what would most be traditionally annuals and so on, we said, hey, what about considering and looking at doing something different in these containers, something that will be more demonstrative of local plants and greenery, and therefore provide more of a story. So right away, the enthusiasm to embrace that concept was wonderful, and that's exactly what we did.
And that's at the Container Village.
Yes, that's at the Container Village.
Yeah,
and
so that was the first. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. And we knew that that's really important to you as well because of the amount of traffic that comes there, and it looks different. Like, people are going to look at it and hopefully say, there's something different about this. We're not sure what it is, but that's the story with that. And then we progressed. So your actual containers with both of the terminals, as well as behind us here and in this room, we saw an opportunity. So you have these beautiful balconies, which had no greenery and nothing on them. And why not, as much as possible, look at how you can mitigate your carbon footprint. And mitigating carbon footprints doesn't mean necessarily having a huge space you work with, but just doing what's now on these 2 balconies on either side of us, which is actually putting some containers in and planting some plants. And again, looking at doing something that is using more local and sustainable plant materials.
That is just so interesting. I think
know.
that is so cool. And it definitely, it livens up the space. The air is better. It's plants are good for everybody.
They are. There are actually studies. It actually helps lower stress, create more of a common place for people. It immediately is something that just provides an atmosphere boost without people even consciously realizing their value.
So you can feel it here at the cruise terminal. We get a lot of feedback, especially this year 2, working with you, that people feel the space is totally different and transformed in here. So that led us to another project. So we were looking at long-wharf beautification, and for many viewers and listeners, you would see the activity down in what we call the long-wharf slip area.
Right.
So it's adjacent to Harbor Passage. We built, as part of our major modernization project, a breakwater down in the slip area so that it could be a safe, protected harbor for the pilots who are crucial to the port operation, our own vessels that we use to service the Port Authority, and then we have space for Indigenous fishers as well down there. So very, very key area. We have local fishers from St. John, greater St. John area that utilize that slip area, and we wanted to bring the community into it. So that project had really been ongoing since 2022. But we were really struggling to finish it off and use the breakwater, and really struggling internally to figure out how can we beautify this. We know how to build a path down there. We know how to make it part of the Cranberry Trail.
Yeah.
That was the easy part. Our folks internally knew that, but we were really struggling what we would do to make it visually appealing. And Sarah, maybe pick it up from there, because this is where your side of the story takes off.
It does, and thank you. And I have to say, so when I was first approached about it, the first thing I did is go down and actually look at the site, as one does. And I went, wow, you've given me a giant steel box in the middle of the Bay of Fundy that I need to landscape. This is a really interesting project, and that's exactly how I approached it. I went, what an honor, and what a unique opportunity. So sort of my design approach is I study a site. So I think it's really important, if you're going to look at doing an ecological design, you have to understand the ecology of the site. Never can I say have I studied an ecology of a site, which is actually a still box that's been built into the middle of such an important and fundamental part of our ecology, which is the Bay of Fundy. So that was when I went, okay, I'm going to go for it here and just see how far I can push the envelope in terms of doing something different that this space deserves. And of course, having understood our ongoing relationship in terms of the port, I knew that if there was any organization that embraces something that is forward-thinking and innovative and ecologically significant, it would be this group here.
Right.
So again, it was a huge opportunity. So I'm not used to actually being in a space where I don't have huge winds blowing against me. And I'm making a joke about every time I go down and do a site assessment, because when I was approached about it, it was I think it was February. So let's say the conditions were not different. Necessarily but that's the important thing about when you go in from an approach of looking at doing a regenerative or generative design. In this case, this wasn't regenerative. Regenerative means you look at a site that maybe is a brownfield and you build it back into something that was or could have been. This was a generative site, meaning there was really nothing there. There was a path down the middle.
Right.
And it was a steel box.
Yeah.
And a steel
Interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of went, okay, let's go for it. So one of the first things I did is, again, I took a couple of months and I just went down on a regular basis.
Right.
And security's, by the way, very good.
Yes.
They would see a strange woman in the middle of a giant storm down there and just check to make sure she was okay. They got to know me, though, after.
Good.
They're all good now. But so that's sort of my first step in a design process, and that's how you discover what is going to ecologically be significant and work in a site. And again, very unique because we're in the middle of a steel box too. It's not just so came up with a design idea, a number of ideas, and sat down with your team. And my initial presentation was very there was a couple eyebrows that went up because, of course, I was introducing some things that hadn't ever been done before. Certainly in this sort of design vernacular. And it was wonderful, actually, because I was encouraged to basically go forward and do something that, again, was very unique. And the general concept was, after, again, doing lots of site studying, let's make a beach. Let's make this into something that is a generative site that demonstrates for guests and people that live in this community what can be done with a space that is probably about as challenging as you get.
No question. And the team probably shared with you the small items we had done previously last year, just kind of in-house before we engaged you. The little work that we had done last fall to make it look good for cruise passengers, even though the site wasn't finished down there, was entirely wiped out by storms over the winter. So whatever small work we did was destroyed within minutes from the might of the Bay of Fundy. So
and
maybe
I shouldn't laugh. That's not funny.
No, it's unfortunate.
It is
but
unfortunate.
It wasn't much. Fortunately, we hadn't done a whole lot of work, but it was just a very small measure we did last fall when the ships came to when the ships came to Long Wharf, the 3 ship days. So maybe we'll probably have images when you go through the editing process, Kate, of this podcast. We can probably share with guests the photos that we've taken, because it is a beautiful site today. But I am fascinated on how you chose, how you curated the product down there, and what product you used to mitigate some of those erosion challenges, kind of the issues that we had last fall and over the winter. To me, that is probably the most fascinating part of all this.
Well, thank you. So,
and I heard you may have a prop with you. Is that true?
I did bring. Where'd my prop go? Nothing like losing your props.
That's okay. We can put it on the back of the.
Is this props? Props.
That's funny. That's it. It's okay. It's okay.
It is. I brought a prop.
Yeah.
I think it's out there.
No problem.
But, so basically, part of the challenges was to find some of the most durable and ecologically important, recyclable and important products to use. So the one prop that I believe somebody is getting for us, if we look off camera for a moment, the most important prop was how to create a safe walking space for the guests that are going to come and enjoy that. So I did a lot of research, and lo and behold, I came across a product that is not only manufactured in Canada, but it's made of 100% recycled plastic. So basically, it was checking all of my check boxes and all of the port's boxes in terms of if you're going to support a product that is. And it had been used and designed in Germany by Germans and been used for 30 years and highly endorsed throughout North America. The prop person just came.
The prop has arrived.
The prop has arrived.
Thank you, prop person. This is the prop.
There it is.
So, so this is how I came up with said prop. It is a product that is used again extensively throughout the world, and it's designed to be used in hot and cold climates, 100% recyclable. And what you do is you actually put that into an area where you're going to either have vehicle or walking traffic, and you can fill it. You can fill it with soil and seed. You can fill it with gravel. You can use it in all sorts of different ways. But basically what it does is it stabilizes the environment. So, and it provides what we needed in that site, which was something that would withstand a large amount of water, a large amount of wind, and not totally erode. So again, made in Canada. It's a wonderful product. It's EcoRaster. I'm not sure. The people that manufacture it are absolutely wonderful. So again, it's in keeping with everything that this organization's about. 100% supportive. It hadn't been used here before. Nobody really knew about it, and that's where I can jump into something if I may. And it's called collaborative design. So I strongly believe if you're going to do something and you want to encourage change and help develop new ways of looking at things, you need to collaborate with people. You need to bring people in to work with you. So I was really fortunate. I worked with Sammy McGuire and Dan Coleman on this project along with Shades of Green, And I couldn't have done it without them, and Shades of Green couldn't have done it without them because, again, it's collaborative approaching. And they were very excited to work with it as well because now they have used a product that they have never had any experience with, and now it's going to be something that we can integrate into more of what we're doing here in this wonderful province. So,
Love
and
that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's really great. It is very cool.
So I want to nerd out for a second. So off camera, before we started, we were talking a little bit about the importance of aquaculture and climate change and plants. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the plants that you worked with down on this site?
I will, and I love geeking out too.
Let's go.
Rocks are my favorite thing. We don't have to necessarily talk
Okay.
about rocks a lot, but we will talk about plants. So one of the fun things, when I first started studying the site in early spring, there was not a green thing growing to be seen, except for one plant. There was one little stolart plant that was coming up in this space, and I went, wow, what is that? Because again, that's part of this design process. You see what works. You see, you walk coastlines. You see what happens in natural environment. Nature tells us. There's a design process called biomimicry, and that's basically a lot of what was integrated into this design. It's what works. We don't have to really figure it out. Let nature tell us what works. So this, I'll use the common name. It's called mugwort. And I went, well, how did a mugwort plant get on long-wharf, and how does it survive, and where did it come from? So I'm a plant geek, so I did a little research, and mugwort was brought over in the as part of the ballast in ships, and they think the Jesuits brought it over in about the 1600s, and it's a highly medicinal plant. The only problem with mugwort, and this is what we have experienced here in any area that's been colonized, is of course it's invasive. So as much as I just went, you little mugwort, you go, it had to go. Because again, it's an invasive species. Right. But again, what a fascinating plant, and what a fascinating part of our history. So if you look at what you can put in a design, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always trying to do everything that's perfectly ecologically, but can be a great learning experience.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wonderful story.
And
Kate's got 10 more questions.
No, it would be so easy just to think, oh, well, what grows together goes together. Let's find a bunch more and put it there. Yeah. Right. But the fact that the way that you study things, your methodology of how you look at your designs and the way that you study a project, I think that's very telling of your work ethic and the integrity and the approach that you take on the work that you do, and especially with your collaborative partners. Yeah. So I think that's very cool. Yeah.
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to pivot to, we talked a lot about the port. You've obviously done a ton of great work at the port. We're appreciative. But you've done some really interesting work up the street a little bit on and everyone's favorite new bar, Hopscotch.
Yes.
So we want to talk a little bit about that, because what's been developed on this podcast, we bring on our favorite people, of which you're one. But we've had other really, really important guests like Judith Mackin and other people that we talk a lot about, future guests, Holly and Ken Singh.
Yep.
And you talk about visionaries, and embodying everything that you're trying to accomplish. So tell us a little bit about how you got connected with Hopscotch and what you've done there, because it is beautiful. For those who haven't been, go to Hopscotch. This is a public service announcement. You've got to go into that. That is one of the nicest spaces in all of Canada.
Yeah.
Bar none.
Wow, and you've traveled, so that's a big compliment, and it's of course a big compliment to them, because they again approach things from the same perspective, I think, as the port. I mean, they're very innovative, hardworking, and they're not afraid to try something a little bit different.
They're not,
they're wonderful. So kudos to Brenda, Shades of Green. So Brenda has been in the business for 25 years here.
Wow.
A lot of people have no idea that Brenda's been around for 25 years.
Wow.
She's probably going to kill me because she'll say, I was only around for 15.
Oh, my goodness. The professional accolades 25, but age-wise, we'll say 15.
Okay. And so she had been doing some of the planters out front of Hopscotch. And then when I came on board, we sort of changed our approach again. We did something that was maybe a little bit more innovative, and we changed up the plants. And then when Holly and Ken were looking at doing the new Hopscotch, they said, I had talked to them about actually doing a living wall outside. So living wall, and I've traveled a fair amount too, and there's lots of chefs that actually have living walls around the world, and they actually grow herbs in them and do all sorts of things, and they actually harvest and use them in the restaurant. Now, climatically challenging here, of course, you could still do it seasonally, but then I brought up the idea of maybe doing a green wall inside, and so I've never heard of it. So I did sort of a bit of a design charrette with them about that. And they went, how cool is that? Yeah. So anyway, Brenda, who's an incredibly creative and wonderful person, said, okay, we're doing a green wall. How unique. And again, never been done, at least, from a commercial perspective here. Yeah. So it was a great honor to do, a couple of green walls. And the design approach, again, trying to always tie things in, was I actually did a Google Maps overview of Scotland. Okay. So, and both of the green walls inside are actually based on a Google perspective of the Highlands and the Lowlands. So, of course, it's a Scotch bar. Yep. So what's appropriate? Yep.
How
cool
is
that? I didn't know that. That makes it even better.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
So basically, both of those are a Google shot in a wall of green of Scotland. So that was the tie in there. So
it's a beautiful space, and I'll just I'll put a plug in too. They've made such a great effort to bring in creative culinary experience. Mm-hmm. They have mocktails. I've never seen a list of mocktails, which
you're
are
not there
very.
A lot, are you?
For what? For the mocktail?
I'm
there a lot. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I live down the street, so of course it's on my walking route.
It's an important place
It's an important part, but for anyone that wants to experience it, it just because it sells alcoholic beverages, it does a lot more there. It's a space that people should go in and really, really try.
Yeah. It's got a really good zen to it.
It
just
does.
got a really good feel, and a lot of the different hanging plants we did there as well. Because they wanted to soften the environment, warm it up, and again, make it engaging and inviting. And plants do that. Yeah.
They really do. And I think maybe the pandemic was a really big catalyst for it, but everybody was getting more and more plants and getting plant babies and things. What can you tell us about what adding more green space, whether it be to urban or to business, what does this do, one, for people, for climate? What in your view?
Well, it's sort of my view, but it's also, I guess it's one I've really done a lot of research in, because I really do care about this. So what it does is it actually has a huge psychological factor for people. It actually improves your mood. It improves productivity. These are studies. It's and as well, I think it gives us something to nurture.
Right.
And, whether it was, I think there was maybe a competition between plants and baking bread during COVID. Yeah. Because of people were just looking for something, something they could do, something they could nurture. And plants provided that outlet. And there was a huge boon in the landscaping industry sort of around COVID, and it hasn't stopped, because I think people have reconnected with nature. They've reconnected with their outdoors because they really didn't have a choice. So, and when you don't have an outdoor, being able to bring the outdoor in, such as having a potted plant or, a living wall or a green wall, that does that.
It really, and it definitely, aside from design, it changes the way that you can actually breathe in the space and the way that you feel in the space, right?
Absolutely. I have to think of the plant geraniums, I believe. Geraniums are actually put on the space station because their ability to clean air. Wow. So somebody's going to probably correct me, but I believe it is geraniums. And that fact just flabbergasted me, that if it can do that in space, a plant has that much importance. How lucky are we?
Wow. Well said. Well, thank you so much for doing this today. We really appreciate you coming. We got a lot more projects. We that's just the beginning at Long-Wharf. We've identified all these areas around the port. We're so grateful to have you as a partner, and really appreciate you taking the time and telling the story.
It's truly an honor working with an organization that is so innovative and forward-thinking and embraces opportunity for change. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening and watching to another episode of the Port Podcast. And we encourage you to go to the Shades of Green website, learn more about what they're doing, take a look into their projects. If it's something that you're thinking, maybe your business or your residence or your your she shed needs, I'm sure they can help. So make sure you reach out, and thank you so much for listening and watching.
We need to talk about the she shed.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening.